El Escorial. Located in the Spanish town of San Lorenzo de El Escorial outside Madrid, El Escorial is the historic home of King Philip II, who'd built it in the early 1560s. The building was meant to commemorate Spain's victory against France in the 1557 Battle of St. Quentin during the Italian War of 1551–59. King Philip also wanted the property to function as a resting place for his parents, himself, and his descendants. The complex was finally completed in 1584, almost 21 years after construction first started. Almost all the Spanish kings that have ruled in the last 5 centuries are buried at El Escorial, including the Bourbons and the Habsburgs. In addition to the mausoleum, the property also consists of a monastery and a schoolhouse. Legend has it that when Lucifer was banished to hell, he created 7 doors to the underworld located throughout Madrid. One such portal is said to be located in El Escorial, which sits at the foot of Mount Abantos, where Lucifer supposedly lived before being exiled. While the complex was constructed, workers constantly saw a black dog wandering around the site, as if he were guarding the property. Folklore claims the canine was a physical manifestation of Lucifer himself. The demonic dog was eventually captured and killed after acting aggressive toward the builders. Some records claim that when King Philip retired to the monastery, he often heard a dog barking through the night. These centuries-old stories continue to circulate throughout the town even today. 7. St. Albans Sanatorium. The property that eventually came to be known as the St. Albans Sanatorium originally served as a Lutheran boys' school in Redford, Virginia. Rumor has it that the teachers encouraged students to bully each other, turning the learning environment into a living hell that pushed some kids to even take their own lives. The building was later repurposed as a psychiatric infirmary in 1916. It was advertised as more of a therapeutic facility compared to other asylums, offering a rooftop garden, bowling alley, and a small farm. But this was far from the reality that was the St. Albans Sanatorium, where patients were often subjected to brutal experimental treatments without consent. These procedures, which included partial brain removals or lobotomies, insulin-induced comas, and electroconvulsive therapy, often left victims permanently disabled, or sometimes worse, dead. There was also a treatment called hydrotherapy, which involved draping a patient's head and body with cold, wet towels and leaving them to soak, often for days at a time without a break. The facility was understaffed and overpopulated, leaving exhausted staff members unable to tend to the thousands of patients in their care at any given time and making already bad conditions much worse. Not surprisingly, many distraught individuals took their own lives under such massive pressure. By the time the institution shut its doors in the 1990s, it had been declining in quality for decades. The closure was long overdue, but some paranormal experts and enthusiasts are convinced not everybody's left the building. Many visitors report seeing apparitions, shadowy figures, and levitating objects. Some say they've heard voices and other eerie, unexplained noises. Even in the absence of these supernatural occurrences, the building carries a dark, depressing aura that many claim is enough to give a person chills. 6. Lemington Spa Station. Since the mid-1800s, the town of Royal Lemington Spa in Warwickshire, England, has been a major train stop between London and Birmingham. For decades, staff and commuters have reported paranormal sightings and activity, giving the site a reputation as one of Britain's most haunted buildings. Adding to the station's mystique is an abandoned basement on one of the platforms, which contains a partially sealed-off staircase that leads seemingly to nowhere. An upstairs office is also rumored to be a hotbed of supernatural activity. In 2014, an employee claimed to have witnessed an invisible force slamming doors, throwing paperwork around, and turning lights on and off. This disturbing activity got so bad that Chiltern Railways had to hire a supernatural liaison officer to keep an eye out for ghosts throughout the station. A journalist named Chloe Mason spoke with the officer Nick Rees on behalf of the Warwick Tab in 2016. Rees told her that he'd gotten used to hearing mysterious footsteps at the property, but the ghosts were mostly friendly and had good energy. His duties included maintaining order among the spirits, making sure that they didn't eat people's food, and checking their tickets. Having an employee on duty to keep the ghost in line seemed to put a lot of customers at ease. Speaking with the Daily Mail, Rees attributed this more to his ability to make people laugh and smile than his ghost hunting skills, but he said he'd also developed a bond with the invisible departed commuters of the past. Another staff member told Mason they'd seen doors slam shut out of nowhere, and a night patrolman described the station as one of the most haunted places out of many he'd visited in his lifetime. 5. Dragsholm Castle. Nestled among picturesque lakes and meadows on the Danish island of Zealand, Dragsholm Castle was built as a shining palace in 1215 by the Bishop of Roskilde. Also popularly known as Dragsholm Slot, it's one of Denmark's oldest secular buildings. During the Middle Ages, the structure was converted into a fortified castle. It was seized by the crown during the 16th century as part of the Protestant Revolution called the Reformation. From 1536 to 1664, it functioned as a prison for church clergy members and nobility. The castle went through several owners after that, and was even restored at one point after its defenders tried to blow it up to stop it from falling into Swedish hands during an invasion. There are rumored to be more than 100 ghosts lurking throughout the historic property. One of them, James Hepburn, was a prominent Scottish nobleman and the third husband to the infamous Mary, Queen of Scots. He was imprisoned at Dragsholm Slot in 1573 and received just enough food and water to keep him alive, according to legend. Hepburn supposedly went insane behind prison walls and died in the late 1570s. Ever since, visitors have reported seeing him riding through the courtyard on his horse. Another ghost, known as the White Lady, was locked away in one of the castle's dungeons by her own father after sleeping with a commoner and getting pregnant. Witnesses have claimed to see a woman wandering the castle at night in a white dress, searching for her long-lost lover and moaning pitifully in sorrow. One of the most famous spirits at Dragsholm Castle is a noble Danishman named Egil Brockenhus. Better known as the Mad Squire, it's uncertain whether he went crazy before or after being locked up at the site. While most of the ghosts have sad stories linked to their presence at the castle, there's at least one happy ghost who roams the palace's halls. Known as the Grey Lady, she died shortly after being treated for a toothache. She was incredibly grateful to the castle's master, who cured her pain, and can now sometimes be seen looking for other acts of kindness to perform. Have you ever been to a castle? Tell us about it in the comments below, and hit subscribe while you're at it. 4. Recoleta Cemetery. Located in Buenos Aires, Argentina, the Cementerio de la Recoleta, or Recoleta Cemetery, became the city's first official public graveyard in 1822. It contains at least 6,400 graves and is one of the world's strangest cemeteries, filled with unique burial markers of all kinds of architectural styles, including miniature Greek temples and Baroque cathedrals. Some of the country's wealthiest and most iconic figures and families are buried here, including the beloved former First Lady Eva Evita Perón, who passed away back in 1952. Presidents, scientists, and other famous individuals were also laid to rest at Recoleta Cemetery, including one of Napoleon Bonaparte's grandchildren, Isabel Waleski Colonna. At first glance, the property seems to be more whimsical than eerie. In fact, this city of the dead is known for its outstanding beauty. But those who take the time to research it or talk to locals will learn the disturbing story of Rufina Cambaceres, a 19-year-old socialite who was mistakenly declared dead by officials after a medical emergency and buried alive. Several days after Rufina was laid to rest, a cemetery worker found her casket and saw that it had been moved in the mausoleum. At first, he blamed grave robbers, but after taking a closer look, he noticed parts of the casket were broken and scratched from the inside, and the young woman's remains were covered in cuts and other injuries she received while trying to free herself. The door to Rufina's mausoleum now contains a statue of her that her mother had made after learning of her daughter's unfortunate fate. With such a horrific tragedy happening at Recoleta, it's hard to think that it's not haunted by the poor young woman's ghost. 3. Ghettos Island. Located in the Delaware River just outside eastern Pennsylvania, a 5.7-acre landmass known as Ghettos Island was listed in 2018 for a modest $150,000. It's both private and accessible. When the river runs low, a person is easily able to walk to the mainland. A small canoe or boat is usually enough to get across during all other times, begging the question why such an ideal piece of real estate came with such a cheap asking price. Ghettos Island is a hard sell because of its reputation as one of Pennsylvania's most haunted properties, according to realtor Teresa Barlow, who was tasked with finding a buyer for the site. The property is named after Charles Ghetto, who murdered his wife centuries ago in 1833. He was hanged on the island because it could hold a bigger audience than downtown Easton. The first attempt at executing Ghetto failed. The second time was successful, but was a long and gruesome process. It was the last public execution to be carried out on Pennsylvania soil due to its disturbing nature. Then Governor George Wolfe banned these gory spectacles the next year. Legend has it Ghetto's ghost haunts the island. A couple owned the property for nearly 60 years before putting it up for sale, indicating that the alleged hauntings didn't bother them at all. They used the island as a recreational site. There are other downfalls to Ghettos Island though. In addition to paranormal activity that happens there, the land is prone to flooding, and Barlow admitted she's unsure if any structures can be built on it. In the past, it was home to an amusement park and lumberyard, but there are reasons those businesses no longer exist, and it may be for these reasons instead of the ghosts. 2. St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. Established in 1789, St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 is the oldest burial ground in New Orleans. It takes up an entire city block and is home to more than 700 tombs holding the remains of nearly 100,000 people. Most of the burials are in the vaults located above ground due to the city's high water table, which makes graveyards prone to flooding. While many historic and noteworthy figures are buried here, Cemetery No. 1's most famous grave belongs to a Creole woman named Marie Laveau. Born in 1801 as a free woman of color, Laveau was infamously known as the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. She inherited much of her expertise from her mother and grandmother, who also practiced voodoo. Laveau also did fortune-telling, prepared herbal remedies, and was an expert on all things occult. She incorporated elements of African religion and culture, as well as Catholicism, into her respected techniques. The Voodoo Queen passed away in 1881 at 86 years old. Almost immediately, rumors began to swirl of paranormal encounters with her spirit. Within days of her passing, several people claimed to have seen her ghost walking through the cemetery, mumbling a Santeria voodoo curse. Those who've crossed paths with her have often said that she seems to be in a bad mood. When people try approaching Laveau's ghost, she vanishes. Legend has it that those who scoff at or don't agree with her beliefs are sometimes scratched, pinched, or shoved to the ground by a mysterious invisible force. Others have reported feeling inexplicably ill after visiting the cemetery, leading many to wonder if Laveau continues to practice voodoo from beyond the veil. People have also claimed to see a large black cat with glowing red eyes wandering the site. To avoid being cursed by this so-called voodoo cat, visitors are warned to never turn their back on the feline and are told to instead cross themselves 3 times while carefully backing away. Many people leave candles, flowers, voodoo dolls, beads, and other offerings at Laveau's grave, in hopes of getting on her good side and perhaps even receiving her blessings. 1. Overton Bridge. Between 300 and 600 dogs have leapt from the tops of Overton Bridge in Dumbarton, Scotland since the 1960s, and sadly, over 50 of them have tragically died doing so. Many believe that paranormal activity is to blame for the canine's bizarre behavior. Dog walkers have reported an unexplainable force that seems to overcome their pets out of nowhere, causing the dogs to run full force to the edge of the bridge, jump, plummet to the rocks 50 feet below. Some stories even claim the dogs who survived their first jump often try to do it again sometime later. Dumbarton's residents are known for their superstitious tendencies, so it's easy to question if these tales are just the exaggerated rumors of overly imaginative dog owners. But Many of the incidents are verified and have actually happened, sparking big enough concerns to prompt the Scottish Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals to investigate. Officials never found solid answers for what could be causing so many dogs to jump off the bridge. Their most logical theory is that the dogs detect mammal activity below the bridge using their enhanced sense of smell, and it compels them to instinctively follow their nose. But there's surely animal activity below other bridges, leaving one to wonder if this really is the case. One thing for certain though, avoid Overton Bridge while walking your dog. Thanks for watching. Which one of these places is the spookiest to you? Tell us in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Bye.